time now for Weekend Appointment. Live in our studios here is attorney Karl Rominger. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. 1-800-734-2132. That's the talk line number. Of course, that's our one-call number. You can use all the radio station numbers if you want, but 1-800-734-2132 will get you on the air here with me and answer your legal questions. As you know, I'm an attorney here in the mid-state. And if you can hear the signal, we'll go to court where you are. So if you've got a custody question, a family law question, a little of anything, we'll talk about it here on the air. And, of course, this morning, I have one of my regular guests on, Mark Vergenes, and Mark's going to talk to us about financial planning and all things financial. So if you have estate planning questions, retirement planning type stuff you want to talk about, Mark, have I got you?
Yes, you do, sir. How you doing?
Good, man. How you been?
Been good. Had a nice cigar yesterday. That was pretty nice and relaxing, and talked all things, AFC, NFC, and moving forward.
Very nice. Now, I know you have to give a little disclaimer before you go on the air here, so go ahead and get it out of the way.
Thank you very much. I am an investment advisor representative offering securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Thanks for doing that. And because I actually do this for a living versus guys on TV and radio, sometimes they're financial journalists. They don't hold licenses. They don't manage money, so they can pretty much say whatever they want and not get in trouble for it.
Yeah, you have a compliance, and I know somebody actually goes back and listens to these shows to make sure you're not doing what you're not supposed to.
That is correct. They do. The SEC usually comes in once a year and says, okay, give me a handful of them. And they take, does someone listen to them? I don't know. But, guaranteed somebody, it's better to be safe than sorry, of course.
Right. Well, if somebody wants to jump in here and ask Mark or I a question, of course, Mark is the financial guy, I'm the legal guy, 1-800-734-2132. And, Mark, of course, it's the beginning of the year here, so tell me, what should I be thinking about in the world of finance and high finance and all that good stuff right now?
Well, if you look at the market last year, we're still pretty much, only a few weeks into the whole 2014. And last year, the S&P was up, from a total return standpoint, over 32%. Dow Jones was up over 29%. International, and the EFI was up to over 23%. NASDAQ up over 40%. Russell 2000-year small cap index almost 39%. But the story was your U.S. bond aggregate, basically 10-year and under bonds, -2. Emerging markets, -2. So you have to ask yourself, if you were in bonds, if you were in fixed income, if you had a conservative portfolio, and maybe you needed to, maybe that was your risk tolerance or your time horizon. But the government, Wall Street, everyone's trying to get you to go into stocks because there's no yields there in bonds and fixed income. I've been, rotating people out of fixed income for about a year and a half now, if not longer. I think as you look into 2014, yes, this year is kind of seesawing back and forth. I think we're going to be in this trading range until for at least another 4 weeks. But I see the Dow going close to 18,000 this year, if not breaking through 18,000. We're at let's just call it 16,458 is where we closed on Friday. So I see a nice gain for the market. No, I don't see 32%. No one predicted 32%. And I know you get by the numbers, Karl. So all the last week's by the numbers is always predictions, but no one saw 32%. I think the best someone saw was like 18, 19%.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you need to take a look at your portfolio, maybe sell some winners now, because then you can wait almost 15 months before you have to pay the capital gains tax, or you can sell some losers from last year to reposition your portfolio. But everybody should be looking at their portfolio, whether it's their 401k, their IRA, their 403b, what have you, and rebalance, put things back in the state that they want them to be in, and if need be, get some help, because the new regulations that are out there now, thanks to Dodd-Frank, you can actually bring someone like me to oversee your 401k through an option called a self-directed brokerage option in your 401k, and I can manage it daily for you, as opposed to you trying to pick one of those target date retirement funds, which typically are fairly expensive and underperform the market.
Interesting. I was not aware of that change. That's very interesting, actually. Now, okay, so basically, and I think this is kind of always the problem, right? So people who were stuck in some conservative investments feel like they were left out. And what you're saying is if you can move some money, you may have been left out initially, but there's still a little more gain left for people.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics go as of last year, as the end of Christmas or New Year's. Since March 9th, 2009, that was the market bottom. That was when everything turned around. The market's up 173%. So someone listening to this right now is like, oh, I know it's going to happen. I'm going to put my money in, and the market's going to fall 20%. That's just my luck. Well, I'm a big believer in dollar cost averaging. So for those folks who have 401ks, 403bs, if you work for the county around it's 457 plans, different things like that, simple IRAs, you're putting money in every 2 weeks. So you're dollar cost averaging already. You're buying at highs, you're buying at lows. It's going to average out, hence dollar cost averaging. So the best time to be in the market is today. Warren Buffett's, one of his great lines is, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. So, still you can get some nice run up here. Yes, the market will always go down and will always go up. I always try to tell folks, and I hate to keep on using these cliches, but it tends to resonate with folks, is the stock market investing is like going up an escalator with a yo-yo. You'll have some downtimes, but typically when you go down, you bounce back up. But if you stay out of the market, you have nobody to blame but yourself. Right now, national CD rates for a 3-year CD, you're talking like under 2%, which is right around 2%.
Right.
So, yeah, and you know this, and your listeners know, you know what the price of a loaf of bread's doing, price of a gallon of milk. I mean, inflation is there. Yes, it's very, very tame, but if you subtract energy and food, which God knows why they do that,
right,
but they do, you're below 2% in inflation. And I just listened to a guy from the Philadelphia Fed was up at our Estate Planning Council dinner, and he elaborated on this very issue about the basket of goods and services. He said, but every 3 years they look at this big grocery cart. He said, this grocery cart unfortunately doesn't have food. He goes, housing's in it. This housing they weight 40% of that basket. He said, so it's basically what the consumer's buying. He said, so we try to always take a different look at what the consumer's buying. Because in the 70s, it was a lot more. It was a lot more with gasoline and such because of the gas guzzling type of cars we had. So, but right now the basket's very, very different.
Now, in terms of the esoteric and where we're at there, I think that's a pretty good update for people. I appreciate it. 1-800-734-2132. I was going to talk to you about, and I've had some fun with that before, have you heard about these Filial Support Laws where you have to pay or might be responsible for your parents' nursing home debt?
Yes, I have. And I think that's that trickles into my line of work because, of course, long-term care insurance is good, or I work with a little bit of elder law attorneys who are,
I went to a seminar where there was quite a few attorneys present. Maybe I don't know, 80 attorneys or so, and the presenter said, "Now, how many people think that these laws are frequently used or enforced?" And maybe 3 hands go up, and they said that seems to be the myth, that nobody realizes that in fact they're alive and strong. And just this past year or two, the Department of Public Welfare had the legislature move the law out of the judicial code and into the domestic relations code and put it right there with child support, parent support. They don't call it that, but you can be responsible for your parents' nursing home debt. And the lawyers also tended to think, and I was guilty of this too, that, okay, yeah, those laws are out there, but when they're used, somebody has to do something to trigger them, or, they're used when the kids run off with money somehow. And the answer is, you look at a couple of the older cases, it might seem that way, but as you get closer in time to the present, it becomes very clear that you don't have to do anything wrong. You don't have to do anything except have money and your parent have a debt.
So who would trigger it? The nursing home?
The nursing home. And the nursing home has, in one of the decisions, been given standing as a person under the statute. And that's the big thing. So now the nursing home. So this is why I'm mentioning it, because it's really something I've been thinking about here. before we would work out these elaborate plans where we would try to make sure the wealth made it to the next generation, okay?
Right.
And do it in a way it would be out look-back periods. But you don't have look-back periods here because the duty to pay doesn't matter where the money came from. And so the child could end up on the hook just because they have money, or the child could end up on the hook because they have some of dad's money. And interestingly, in the one lawsuit where they made a guy pay $95,000 nursing home bill, they told him he had to pay it, and he said, well, "What about my brothers and sisters? You didn't join them in the lawsuit."
Right, right.
And the court said, "Doesn't matter. You could have brought them in as additional defendants." And of course, he was the only in-state guy. Everybody else was from out of state, and that's the practical reason why they did it that way. But he got tagged with that judgment, and had to pay it. And so what I'm now telling people is, you need to think about not only how to get wealth down to the next generation, but maybe even how to keep it out of the next generation's direct access or control through trust vehicles, because otherwise it's going to be capturable. So maybe before, when there would be a marginal call where, you know how this goes with a trust, it could be very expensive to maintain and set up. And so sometimes you say, well, you don't have quite enough money to put in trust. I think now you have to rethink it and say it's going to be a little more expensive than you want to spend, but you might not want to give your kid $100,000 direct, even through some planned giving or something. You might want to fund a trust with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that from the trust aspect, but some commercial annuity companies, insurance companies putting out annuities, one thing that a lot of advisors forget, and I use annuities too because it's great pension-like income for folks. It's always part of a retirement plan if you can do it.
Right.
But what's nice about it is that at date of death, and that's to say mom's single now because dad passed away a while ago or what have you, so mom's looking for that to be an easier transfer and bypass probate and go right to their kid's hands. There's going to be some taxes due. However, she does the annuity because it just sounds good and out of the public eye for probate, right? So she puts it in the annuity, but now mom has a way of saying, here's how I want the money to be paid out at death. Most annuity companies now will allow mom to speak from the grave, and she could go ahead and put in writing with the insurance company how they are to pay out the death benefits. So it could be, over the next 5 years. It could be over the next 10 years. She can actually stipulate how much for the insurance company to pay. And, of course, you and I both know insurance companies happy to do that, right? Yeah. They retain the asset.
Right. We'll spread it out. How great is that? That's interesting. So that gives you a whole nother overlay. If you could use an annuity and stuff. And I'm thinking this stuff out loud here on the radio because, quite frankly, I think the increasing enforcement of like these filial support laws, first of all, it scares the hell out of me because I start thinking, oh, gosh, mom goes to the nursing home, and all of a sudden I'm on the hook. Now, of course, I guess in modern society we don't want to be, but traditionally we were on the hook for our elders in a direct sense.
I mean, exactly. And you would think if this message would get out to folks, there'd probably be a re-interest in long-term care insurance, which most people have this feeling that it's fairly expensive, and I guess it is if you're over age 70 buying it for the first time. But if you're someone in your 50s, I always try to look at it with my clients when they hit 55, because I think it's dirt cheap for what it'll pay out. But once you get older and the ailments start setting in and prescriptions, you don't necessarily just take vitamins anymore. You're taking 2 or 3 prescriptions. All that adds into it. And I'll be the first to say long-term care insurance is really sold. It's not bought. Meaning, folks don't come in my office asking for it. As a financial planner, I have to tell folks about the dangers, try to fill in the holes and show them where their nest egg could erode. And, of course, a nursing home stay is very big in that situation. Right. So I try to show them that, hey, for pennies on the dollar, you can take away that risk. You could transfer that risk to an insurance company. But if they don't want to do it, or medically they can't get the insurance, then we're calling someone like you, and we're trying to put some financial tools in place as well as some legal tools in place to hopefully protect mom and dad's assets from the government and anybody else, as well as pass it to the kids. So you're very much part of the equation if, in fact, I can't get the long-term care insurance. But even so, I probably would do belt and suspenders and talk to you about trusts and different things along that line.
I definitely recommend, myself, long-term care insurance to people. But But it's like all insurance products. They seem worthless until you need them. So when you send that premium in every month or every year on your auto insurance and your car insurance, your home insurance, your workers' comp insurance, your disability, it's all an expense with no return until you need it. And so insurance is one of those things that I don't think anybody likes to spend. And I think I agree with you. You have to be sold on it, because even auto insurance, if people were left to their own devices, not required to carry it, I'd be willing to bet half as many people would carry it.
Yeah, and this will prove my statistic correct. Is CPAs love it. In fact, if they do any kind of financial planning, or they really do go above and beyond for their clients, I get calls from CPAs to say, "Hey, can you talk to this guy about long-term care insurance?" And here's how the conversation goes: Don't go cheap. Excuse me? Don't go cheap. They're going to try to nickel and dime you. Make sure they get the Cadillac plan. Make sure everything's covered. Tell them I told you to. Tell them not to go cheap. and then the other statistic that's out there is the number one purchaser demographically of long-term care insurance are people that were in education, teachers, professors, what have you. I make the comment that probably because they're smarter, they're probably very well read. They're reading newspapers, they're reading articles, they're up on publications. They see that, A, I'm probably not going to die in my recliner watching TV, and B, I'm probably going to get sicker, and look how much money can be taken away from me, and so forth. They're the number one purchasers in long term. You go to any nursing home, and you find someone who is, or adult living facility, or Willow Valley, or well, that's a bad example because they're a continuing care retirement community, but some of these ones that take long-term care insurance, and you'll find, you just say, "Hey, what'd you do for a living? You're retired? What did you do?" "Oh, I was a school teacher." "Oh, I was a superintendent." "Oh, I was a professor." By and large, overwhelming majority.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I did want to talk to you about, since Mr. Lawyer, I did want to get your feelings on the voter ID law being overturned. I thought that would be, I'd like to hear your little snippet. I mean, I think you thought it was going to be overturned the whole time, didn't you?
I did, and I'll tell you something. The little old ladies at my polling station,
right,
had when they first put it in place, I said, "I'm not showing you any ID," and they said, "Well, you don't have to yet, but you will in November." And then, of course, November rolled around, and it was still restrained. And I said, "Well, what happened to your voter ID law, ladies?" I don't think they'd like me, but I was giving them a hard time about it, because I was saying here it's problematic for two reasons. One is it sounds good on paper, but it probably makes no real difference. That's part of the problem. But number two, I'm going to get some people all upset about that. 1-800-734-2132, by the way, if you want to weigh in on the voter ID law, 1-800-734-2132, because as you know, the Commonwealth Court has refused to support it. And actually, it's a 103-page opinion, Mark. I haven't read it all yet. So wow,
103.
Yeah. So it's But here's what they did initially, and why I thought they were going to lose. And I maybe told you this once before. In a stipulation entered into by the Republican Attorney General. And I like to say Republican Attorney General Linda Kelly, because it wasn't some Democrat selling out the state. Okay. She entered into a stipulation with, I think it's the ACLU and the litigants in the Commonwealth Court that said that two important things. Number one, they were unaware, the state itself was unaware of any individual voter fraud taking place in the state, and also the state was unaware of any individual voter fraud taking place in other neighboring states. And so what they're basically saying is, now somebody said to me, "Oh, it's bull, there's voter fraud." I said, no, individual voter fraud. Usually voter fraud involves the little old ladies that I like to make fun of sitting at the table. They have to be in on it. So down in Philadelphia, in these famous precincts, the voters, the election, and the judge of the elections, and everybody's in on it, and that's how they cook the books, and they get an extra 1,000 votes out of the precinct from the dead people, okay? But you got to have everybody in on it, because the Republicans are counting, the Dems are counting, and that's why down in areas like Philly, you can get guaranteed wins in different precincts. So the Republicans always win this precinct, and the Democrats always win this precinct, and because everybody has to cut their deals, and so some winners and some losers, and the guys in power take a bigger share of the votes and whatnot, but they parcel them all out. That's not the kind of voter fraud that voter ID will prevent. voter IDs, making people show a driver's license, is not going to prevent somebody from claiming they saw a driver's license for the fake vote that they just cast as part of a systemic voter fraud. But individual voter fraud would be like you deciding you want to vote in 2 polls, or you deciding that you're an illegal immigrant and for some reason you want to vote, or you for whatever reason going in and voting when you couldn't otherwise vote, or pretending to be somebody you aren't and going to multiple polling places. Well, the answer with that is there just isn't any of it going on at any detectable level that anybody knows about. But even if they did, it doesn't matter, because the court was told by the chief law enforcement officer of Pennsylvania, a Republican, that there was no individual voter fraud they were aware of. So then you have a constitutional right, and the judge is being asked to weigh the burden of getting an ID versus the right to vote. And obviously the right to vote is a very important right, and we don't want to infringe it if possible in any way, shape, or form. And the judge says, well, it's true that an ID will make it even a teeny bit harder to vote, and he has more to say than that, but let's just say he gets to that. He says just a teeny bit harder to vote, and the state's telling me that there's nothing that will be remedied or fixed by it because there's no individual voter fraud they're aware of. So basically the judge made a pretty common sense decision at the end of the day and said it doesn't really it affects somebody's important rights, and it's not really preventing anything that's actually happening. So everybody lives in fear, and I always like to make fun of, the fear mongers. But people live in fear of global warming, and people live in fear of voter fraud. And for some reason, everybody's convinced that the world's heating up from global warming, just as they're convinced that illegal immigrants and random people are running around casting illegal ballots all the time. And it turns out, at least as far as the Attorney General's office was concerned, that doesn't happen at all. Now, could you find a case somewhere, sometime? I'm sure somebody will. But I got bad news for people. While your vote's important, odds are, even if 100 people a year fake a vote somewhere, it probably will make no meaningful impact in any statewide or even countywide election.
Yeah.
That's why the decision came out the way it did.
Okay.
And Mark, it's like I don't know why people think this, but they're always. And it's 1-800-734-2132 if you want to jump in on the conversation. 1-800-734-2132. People tend to think, and they get upset about some things, So I was just thinking about this the other day. Like around here, I hear a lot of people tell me, well, the illegal immigrants and stealing our jobs, and I'm like, yeah, but these are the same people who thought it was a nifty idea that if a Cuban makes it to America, they get to stay, right?
Right.
So what's the difference? I mean, I guess they're legal immigrants, right? So are they? Who's taking your job and who's not? It's just, to me, it's always interesting how these questions formulate based on what people think is happening or not happening. And at this point,
and it goes back to, I have to show my ID when I buy a pack of cigarettes. I have to show my ID when I get on a plane. I have to show my ID at the bank to cash a check. And there was someone on Facebook who said, well, that's because banks have been frauded. People have tried to cash bad checks.
Right.
Planes have been used for terrorism. That's been proven. So we can get on the list, and it has been proven, and it has been shown. And those are all private businesses, so they can ask for whatever they want to ask for. But when you come to a constitutional right, which is not a for-profit business, you can't infringe upon the Constitution, no matter how easy, even though the kid will take his grandmother down to City Hall to protest.
Right.
Then complain that he can't get her to the DMV to get a license. That doesn't matter. It's not the same as the bank. It's not the same as the airport. And, of course, this guy who posted this was a lawyer. But, I mean, it was a very valid. I'm like, you know what? That's right. That's a pretty good argument.
Yeah, and that's and the other thing is, I think we've been too remiss as a society in allowing government to require steps and hoops from us on various things. So from the libertarian streak in me says, hey, one less regulation, maybe not such a bad thing. I'm going to take a break here, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to keep talking with Mark Vergenes, 1-800-734-2132, 1-800-734-2132. If you want to get your legal question or financial question answered, you'll have until 9 o'clock here. So call 1-800-734-2132. And I also want to mention Harrisburg Beer and Cigar over on Union Deposit Road in Harrisburg. Great selection of beer, obviously, but an amazing walk-in humidor. You haven't been up there yet, have you, Mark?
I have not been to that location yet, but it's on my list the next couple of
We'll
weeks.
put it on your bucket list. Or I can meet you over. They got a great lounge and everything. But Nick has an awesome selection of cigars over there. See you after the break.
You know, 3/4 of the Earth's surface is covered by water. The rest grows plants. Hi, I'm Bob Carey, host of Garden Talk. Every Sunday, I'll explore the all-encompassing world of plants, whether they're in your garden, along the highway, or someplace a little unexpected. Learning about plants is uplifting, entertaining, and sometimes almost unbelievable. So tell your friends, tell your grandma, and yes, tell the kids that Garden Talk is on every Sunday from 11:30 to 12:30, right here on Country Gold Radio.
Do you know what that sound is? That's your new digital marketing department. And that'll be your new web designer. And that's Haibu, where these experts are joined by many more, from web designers to search marketing specialists who work hard to get your business noticed online and on mobile. Best of all, Haibu can do it all for you, or give you the tools to do it yourself. To find out more, go to haibu.com. That's HIBU.com. Or call 855-464-HIBU. Oh, that'll be your next new customer. Haibu, made for business.
Sure fresh,
Can you conference the
sure friendly, doing our best to give you more. We're your neighborhood Sure Fine Stores.
Get great Gold Card savings this week at your locally owned Nell's Market Fresh Foods. Fresh hotel-style turkey breast, only 98 cents a pound. All natural boneless and skinless chicken breast, just $1.88 a pound. And boneless New York strips as low as $4.99 a pound. Hellman's mayo is only $2.99 a jar. All Fresh Express salad blends, 2 for $5. BOGO specials at Nell's this week include Enselman's Donuts and Donut Holes, Louis Kemp's Seafood Delights, Ken's Salad Dressings and Marinades, Surefine Shredded Cheeses, Arnold's, Sara Lee, and Stroman Breads. They're all buy one, get one free. Nell's has locations in Enola, Hanover, East Berlin, New Oxford, and on the Walnut Bottom Road, Carlisle. Use your Nell's Gold Card for great savings and gas rewards, and as always, thank you for shopping Nell's.
Doing our best to give you more. We're your neighborhood Sure Fine Stores.
Country Gold Radio, it is 8:37. We are listening to Weekend Appointment with live attorney Karl Rominger. You are live, right?
I'm live.
Okay, 243-1200, 697-4297, or 877-532-866-532-9640. 866-532-9466. Those are the local numbers. And, Karl, you have another number.
800-734-2132, which is our 24/7 number, which will reach me whether I'm on the radio or not.
There we go. Okay, we have another phone call.
Who we got here?
Who do you think it is?
Hey, Jay. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? I do have a question for Mark. Not sure how serious it is. I wondered if his office in any way resembles Leonardo DiCaprio's in The Wolf of Wall Street.
We got to figure out how to get him conferenced in here, two people at the same time. We're working on it.
Go ahead.
Mark, you there?
Yes, I am.
Jay, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah. Jay has a question for you. Can you?
Okay.
I don't know if we can hear. We got to get Jay back on to get the question, don't we? Jay.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the question? We'll get Mark to answer it.
Hey, Mark, I wondered how, is your office anything like Leonardo DiCaprio's in The Wolf of Wall Street?
Did you hear that question?
No, I hear you now.
Okay.
But,
He wants to know if your office is anything like the Wolf of Wall Street.
No, in fact, there was a big article in some publication that I guess called Investment News. It's kind of really written for guys like me and in business and so forth. Tells you what everybody's doing and laws and all that kind of stuff. And the whole industry is slamming that movie. It's actually done. It's based on the life of the guy that Boiler Room was also written for. Which is where the guy was basically trying to sell penny stocks, pumping them up for his own firm, and then once they were selling them to people, they would sell their own holdings, so they would make a killing. So yeah, no, that's nothing more than drama. I'm sure there are people. I hate to say that, but I'm sure there are people out there that are like that. But no, No one will ever make a check payable to Mirus Financial Partners, name of my firm. I actually have a broker-dealer, one of the largest in the industry, that oversee all the compliance. So, and I could tell them go on to FINRA, FINRA, FINRA.org, whoever you're working with or whoever you're thinking about working with, you plug in their name and there's something called broker check on there, and you can get all the background on anybody you're they're compliant.
Interesting, very interesting. All right, Mark, I'm going to go back to Jay here. I think I got to go back and forth between. I haven't quite figured out how to conference everybody in together yet, so let's pop Jay back on. Jay, did you hear any of that?
Yeah, I sort of. Well, I was obviously a little tongue-in-cheek there, but I didn't think most of the businesses were quite run like that. Actually, I did have a kind of a comment on the voter ID thing. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of mixed about that. I certainly would have no problem showing an ID. But I think one of the things that gets me about that particular issue is where one of the Republican legislators pretty much admitted why they were pushing that it was all politics. And so I mean, I have a feeling that, but again, I personally think it is possible for people to get IDs these days. But it occurs to me, usually used to get a lot of talk about gun rights, things like that, which supposedly are protected by the Constitution. Now, I'm kind of a Second Amendment guy, but I'm really not a gun lover or anything like that. I'm not a gun guy. But it occurs to me that in a case like that, if the ownership of a gun is a right guaranteed by the Constitution, there shouldn't be theoretically any need for registration or other governmental, I'll call it interference for lack of a better word. And I can see where it doesn't specify that you're allowed to drive. The driving is a right as opposed to a privilege. So I can understand, driver's licenses and car registration and everything like that.
And there's some regulation is allowed of constitutional rights, and we use different levels of scrutiny to determine whether the government can infringe it and to what extent. So even First Amendment has content-neutral restrictions on time, place, and manner can be upheld and survive the strict scrutiny test. So I mean, it's not impossible to burden voters. On the other hand, I think one of the other problems that the state had, quite frankly, and I didn't mention this a little earlier, but it's absolutely in the judge's opinion, is the fact that after they tried to put this law in place, they still couldn't even come up with a decent system of giving people IDs. In other words, the state was doing such a horrible job of trying to make it, quote, easy for anybody to get an ID, whether they had one or not, that I think the judge also had some concerns that the implementation, and given the time frames he'd given them during the litigation and their inability to do it, didn't make them trust the government to do it going forward.
Well, my mother, who at the time was probably never had a driver's license, she was in Philadelphia, and finally, for some reason, she needed an ID. I don't know if she needed a passport. I don't know what it was, and she must have been in her 60s or 70s at that time. And she had no problems getting an ID in Philly. Again, I suppose there's folks, if they have completely no documentation as to their birth or any kind of work record, might be harder. But it's just hard for me to.
Well, right. No, I understand, and of course the flip side is there are a lot of people out there that don't have that kind of stuff, or mobility and all those issues, and maybe getting out to vote is important to them. Although I again, it's sort of like this voter fraud thing itself. I doubt there's as many individuals affected as the plaintiffs can make one believe.
Well, everything comes down to politics anymore. That's the problem, and if people would just look at it, the leadership, if you will, could just look at anything straight on and say what is right or what it's not right, what is practical, what is pragmatic, instead of what is for our side and what is for the other side.
We have to end the gridlock. Political cliche.
Yeah,
number
actually, I was going to call
100.
and say something about gun rights and get all the gun guys going. If they can get them to call in.
They will. They
well,
will.
Maybe they will.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm going to jump back and talk to Mark.
All right, take care. Bye.
All right, thanks, Shay. Who I got? Linda. Linda. Linda, do I have you, Linda? Oh, we lost Linda. Mark, you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. I don't know if you heard any. Can you hear that when that's on? Can you hear the radio?
No, it's dead silent.
It's
Go ahead.
Gotcha. So you didn't hear the whole conversation. Good. That's good because we talked about you pretty at length. Yeah, we're getting this phone system nailed down. We're gonna eventually have it here. It's one of those things. It's sort of like anytime you get new equipment or you change studios, as I did, everything works a little differently. So we'll get that figured out next.
Plus, I'm just not that smart.
You're not that smart. I'll bet you if we play with that, we'll eventually figure out how to do it.
I'm sure there was a way.
There's a way to lock them. It looks similar to the phone I used to use at that other place. So, but not identical, and that's the key. That's the key reason why I'm not reaching over there, going, I know what to do. This is this station has talk on Saturday mornings a little bit, but mainly this is the place you listen to your classic country music. How do you describe your format? It's classic.
I describe it.
Yeah, how do you describe it?
I describe it. Well, I just was going to say classic country music.
Right.
Okay. Johnny and Waylon and Willie and some Hank Jr.
I love Hank Jr.
Yeah, classic. Dolly and Reba and stuff from the last 50 years up to 2005.
I recently learned that Dolly Parton sings. I've always been a fan of hers, but I also learned she sings. Yeah.
Ba-boom.
Ba-boom. Yeah, no, but so the studio is not optimized for talk, so we've just got to get optimized for it. That's all. But so, Mark, what else should we be thinking about here? I mean, I hear the buy gold, buy silver drums beating constantly on some radio stations.
No, just back away. Don't do it. If you have to buy something, if you want to buy, what I'm trying to do for folks is the 3 to 5% of the portfolio. For me, the outlier is energy.
Okay.
The Marcellus Shale play, but it's not just because of Pennsylvania. It's because of the Vulcan. It's because of the Barnett Shale in Texas, Vulcan up in Montana and the Dakotas. We're going to be energy independent. Worst case, 10 years. Best case, 5 years. We're going to be net exporters of energy, which blows my mind if you think about it from, the way we were raised. And we went through the 70s where you waited in line for gas and whatnot. We're going to be energy independent in so stuff's being drilled. The master limited partnerships, the MLPs, are something that you basically are taking advantage of the pipeline, getting it from where you're extracting it,
right,
getting it to somebody who wants to use it. And MLPs, the way I'm doing it is open-ended mutual funds. Oppenheimer has one called Steel Path. Now, again, I don't know anybody's risk tolerance, time horizon, and so forth, and I'm happy to give them a fact sheet, prospectus, and everything on the fund. But that's something that I'm looking at getting a lot more folks involved in, just because it is something I think that's going to be, it's a trend, and you never want to fight the trend. You want to see if you can ride the trend or make the best guess to make some money in the trend.
Right.
So energy is the thing that I would be going to. If you had to make a call between gold or silver, I would do silver. And again, I would play that more like through a precious metals ETF or precious metals mutual fund. I really wouldn't go out and buy hard bullion or silver coins, but to each his own. If that's what you want to stick it in your hand, you want to feel it, okay. But just don't go crazy and over allocate your portfolio. Again, 3 to 5% is probably fine. But I'm not. I mean, what you're telling me is the United States is going to melt down, and we're going to go back to the gold standard, or another shoe is going to drop here, which is very likely. However, I'm just not seeing gold running up the way it has been.
Yeah, even Greece claims to have an operating surplus now. Talking about lack of meltdowns.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, they're not too crazy as a percent of GDP with their debt. I mean, amazingly so. I mean, I was looking at some. J.P. Morgan put out this Global Insights type graph, and I kind of printed it out because in case that question came up from one of your callers or something. But it was blowing me away. They're not that bad off. I mean, yeah. Here it is right here. Let me see. Debt to GDP ratios. United States is about 105% of GDP. It's kind of funny if you look at this figure. Japan, they actually break the graph and they restart it. And Japan is like this, looks like this little speck of an island way out here. It's like at 245% of GDP. They just figure if they push it out far enough, oh, well, that ship will never dock.
Right.
It's scary. Good luck with Abenomics over there in Japan. I'm not
Japan is, well, yeah, and I mean, that's my take on it. And of course, this is the finance show today, but Japan is way over leveraged. They've done that for a long time. I'll tell you another interesting little quirk I was reading about the other day. India, okay? Mm-hmm. They're a net importer of gold because traditionally, and any Indian person listening can tell me I'm right or wrong about this, but my understanding is at a traditional Indian wedding, the bride, if possible, would love nothing better than to actually fall over because she has so much gold on. And
Correct.
They will literally, try to load the bride up with as much gold jewelry as possible. And in general, gold jewelry is very sought after for just literally for wearing and hoarding. And as a result, it's not like gold that's being put in reserves or held in circulation. It literally just disappears into the countryside. And as a result, the rising middle class is and the spending power. You buy gold. Well, what ends up happening is all the hard dollars or hard money flows out of the country to bring in the gold, but the gold never comes back out, and the gold doesn't belong in any institution anywhere, and it's not an asset that anybody can loan off of or hang on to, except for the people who have it, who are just using it as jewelry, not as a investment vehicle per se. And
right.
so,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, right. And so it's gotten so bad now that they actually had to put a tariff or tax on the gold imports to try to slow people down. Because
you're absolutely right. Because I mean, with gold. And I have a few clients who are from the country, and a lot of them keep their money over in India because of the tax situation here in America. And they tell me stories on how people, you always see them with fanny packs, especially if you're like in New York or LA or Baltimore, you see a lot of Indian gold. And what's in that fanny pack is a little bit bigger than a business card or a credit card, gold bars.
Uh-huh.
And so that's easy for them to take from one country to the next because, as you and I know, gold is gold, and the price is the price. And if you need money, you just take that bar and you trade that in for gold. Pretty much any bank or what have you will do that transaction for you. And also, too, in India, you're absolutely right. Everybody has it. I mean, you can see in a lot of parts, it's still a third world country, and you'll see folks walking around who, are in less than desirable living conditions, but they may have a gold watch or a gold bracelet or gold this or gold that on. It's very much a status symbol over there, and it's very much a culture thing. I remember I spoke on estate planning and business continuation at a hotel owners convention in Atlantic City, and Indian folks own like over 50% of all the hotels in America. So this was a very near and dear thing to them, and I'm just getting my suit on, getting ready to go. Well, one of the people who asked me, they said, if you have any gold, wear it. And I'm like, because, and I kid you not, she goes, because they won't see you getting out of the car you drive.
right.
They won't know if you're successful. So I'm like, well, the fact that I know what the heck I'm talking about, and I'm going to save them thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes and make sure their kids get this, that's not going to qualify me as an expert and successful. But the fact that I'm wearing a gold bracelet or a gold watch will. And she dead seriously looked at me and went, yes.
Well, yeah, and that's because it's the same thing here with how you tailor your clothes or how you appear, that can sometimes send. But yeah, and that's what's interesting to me is that it actually, throws off the balance of trade, that kind of hoarding. And it really reminded me of that is in Japan, one of their problems has been is that they oversave.
Right.
And because they oversave, the velocity of their money is so low.
Right. I tell you what, I know you're getting towards the end of your show here, but one thing that, because since you said it and you were surprised at it, but I want to really harp on this for your listeners, is the self-directed brokerage option that's available in most company-sponsored retirement plans. Now, because of the regs, if somebody has a Fidelity, I'm just going to use awesome terms out here that I think people probably have, but if you have a Fidelity 401k and you call Fidelity and say, hey, help me pick up my investments,
right,
they're going to tell you no. They're going to lead you to a website or whatever. But the reason they're doing that is not because they don't know what they're talking about. It's because it's actually illegal for them to do that.
Okay.
So it's against the law. Number two, the self-directed brokerage option, because typically when you have a 401k, you have like 15, 10, 15, 20 different, a menu of investments. Well, the self-directed brokerage option allows you to invest in whatever you want. To your point, gold, silver. To your point, it could be whatever the person wants. So the employee can say, hey, Mark, I'm going to open my self-directed brokerage window, give you access to manage my money. I can't take it out. I can't steal. I can't be Bernie Madoff or any of that kind of stuff. But I can actively trade within that account. So typically what I do is I try to find a money manager who does that and will touch that money or oversee that money each and every day. And there are a couple of people that will enter that agreement. Now, typically, an outside firm's going to charge 1%, and I'm going to charge somewhere close to 1% depending on the level of account. So you're saying, oh, my gosh, 2%. Well, I could tell you now the national average of you just doing it yourself the way it is now using the fund lineup, you're probably paying 1.55. That's the national average. If you are in some esoteric fund, a lot of international, what have you, or chasing returns, you're probably over 2%. So at the end of the day, it's probably a wash having me there versus not having me there on fees. But the point I want to drive home from all the different, and this is Fidelity put out this data and so forth, the person who has someone like me or an outside firm through the self-directed brokerage window doing this stuff averages about 2.5% per year better return. So if I can average you 2.5% better return over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, however long you're going to be in that 401k, you're going to see monies compounding at a much higher rate. So for a lot of folks, and it's something that's relatively new for a lot of plans, Fidelity loves it because it takes them off the hook.
Right.
A fiduciary response, and you know these terms of law. It takes them off the hook. The employers love it because the employers now like, hey, I gave the employee I even told the employee they can do whatever the hell they want. They can go anywhere they want in the market. They chose not to. You can't sue me. I gave them a great fund lineup of menu, and I gave them the access to go to this window and do whatever they want. They just chose not to do it.
Now, well, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and talk about this off the air, how are they going to do it, Mark?
Okay. The name of my firm is Mirus. Think of the word miracle. M as in Mark, IRUS, Mirus Financial Partners, and partners is plural, is the website where they can call my office at 717-509-4521. That's 509-4521. You can find me on Facebook. Last name is spelled Vergenes, V as in Victor, ERGENES. Or you can go ahead and I'm sure it's getting in contact with Karl there at the show, and Karl will repeat all these numbers for you, and he'll tell you how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody can message me as well. And just want to let you know, this show will actually be downloaded and uploaded to Spreaker, which is the online system we're using to archive all our old shows, and you can get them on demand. And this one will be on the front page of the website of Rominger Law for a day or two, and then it falls back into the archives as other stuff comes up. But a couple hundred people are checking out each podcast as we put them up, and I just did a little ditty on custody that I have recorded up on the web and Spreaker as well, where I had about 2,200 people listen to it, about 10-minute diatribe on child custody.
Wow.
So we know people are listening to it, so I wanted to mention it because I know you do a radio show as well on a different station. But if you can get me some of those shows, I can archive them and put them up so people could catch some of your information as well.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Thank you very much. Are you going to post this nugget to Facebook, or if you do, tag me in it so I can throw it out to my friends as well?
Oh, yeah, I will, absolutely. What will happen is once I put it up, I'll put it on Facebook. And actually, Spreaker has an automatic thing for it, but I'll I'll fancy it up a little bit. Well, Mark, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it, and we'll have you back.
Thanks a lot, man. Let's talk more about doing something on the long-term care side, just as a greet and meet or a little symposium or something like that. I think that'd be very interesting for folks.
All right, take care. 1-800-734-2132 if you need me throughout the week.
Okay. Why? And they say, well, that's a very status symbol. They'll know you're successful.